Hello, good morning, Vivien.
Hi.
I am so happy to welcome you.
Thank you for having me.
It's really, an excitement. I would just start with saying just a few words before we start chatting.
Okay.
That it happens that you were my guide in Liberation Unleashed. It happened quite accidentally that you picked my thread 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm going just to use this opportunity to express my gratitude first, because what you shown me then, I don't know if it is like a right word to show, but it completely changed my whole perspective of what I called my life.
I'm glad to hear that.
And that is my little introduction. And I can ask you, would you mind to share a little bit of a story of Vivien, or what did she looking for? Did she found something? I don't know, just to start from somewhere.
Yeah. What I was looking for peace, love, and of suffering. I had a quite traumatic childhood, which resulted in thoughts, feelings, behaviors, which wasn't the most pleasant, to say the least. So I was constantly searching to find ways to feel better and not suffer, and to have inner peace. So in my teenage years, I bought books which was resembling to looking for something, which was resembling to inquiry, actually. And that had some effect on my life and how I view life, but still I could not be happy. I just couldn't. So I tried everything I could. Of course, first I started outside of the world, finding things that could make me happy, but of course they failed. Everything failed, all relationships, everything always failed. Then I tried therapy, which was quite effective at the time to a certain level. But up to a certain level, which is the belief in the separate self, which suffers, because the separate self is the activity of suffering itself. That could be a definition for it. Well, with that, it could not help. So I was constantly looking for love and approval from others, but it felt like as if I were an empty cup with a hole at the bottom, and no amount of love what put into the cup by others could ever stay in the cup, because it was constantly leaking out. So it always needed to refill.
Yeah. It's a 24/7 job.
Yeah, exactly. And after many, many, many years, I just discovered that literally nothing outside of me could ever make me feel love or loved or be happy. Nothing outside of me could ever give me what I was looking for. So that was a very strong turning point for me. And that's when I started really looking into the notion of self or no self. I started with Eckhart Tolle. I was really hung up on the Course in Miracles. Do you know the Course in Miracles?
Yeah, I'm familiar, but I never tried those.
Yeah, it is very religious in terms. So I had a huge resistance to the religious aspect of it, but the meaning, it just felt so true that I could not stop reading it. And I started doing the lessons, which made a lot of difference. But after 3 months, I wanted something quicker. It was just too slow for me. So
Yeah.
at that time, I was watching lots of YouTube videos, also signed up to Liberation Unleashed. I had a guide, Vince. And at the time, I was listening to lots of Tony Parsons videos.
Mhm.
So I was guided, plus I spent most of my time on watching non-duality, videos about non-duality. And I remember that I was watching Tony Parsons. As I don't know what he said, but it was something about there being no control.
Mhm.
And I just had to have a break with the video. I stopped the video. I went to the bathroom, and spontaneously I just looked. I was just checking if this is actually true, whether there is control or not. And that was very shocking. I immediately saw that there is nothing is moving this body. There's nothing. It was so shocking that I was leaning to the wall in the bathroom and could not move. It was just, I don't know how long it took, a few minutes. Shocking, but not in a bad way, not with fear, but with an extreme surprise. Oh my God, there is no control. So probably that was the biggest or the strongest or the biggest part which started to dismantle the idea that there is an I. Because without control, what could be the I?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then later on, I was still looking whether there is really an I, because that was the moment of seeing that there is no control. But what if there is an I? There is a separate self, just I don't have control.
Yeah, this is very tricky here.
Yes, it's tricky because, okay, there is no control, but I still here. I might be still here. So I was looking for the I, and I just repeated the word I, both in English and in my native language. And I was really looking for what is this word is pointing to. And I was searching everything in my body. I always felt my chest. When I said the word I felt the sensations. But then I discovered that these are just sensations. That is not the I. And then I don't know how, it was an early morning. My husband was still sleeping. And I remember the sunshine coming through the window, and I just did this inquiry. I was very interested what this I is. And I could see that it is just a word. It does not refer to anything actual, anything real. It's just a word. There's nothing behind of this word.
And that's it, basically.
And that's it, yeah. So that part wasn't shocking. It wasn't that much of a surprise, because the surprise part was no control, but really saying that this word is just a word. It is just a word. There's nothing else to it. In other words, I could say that the body is empty of a self. There is nothing inside of the body thinking, feeling, deciding, experiencing. It's just functioning. Sometimes I call the body as a biochemical machine.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I'm making the joke that we don't have to invent artificial intelligence, because that is the human body.
Yeah.
Because it's not deciding or doing things on its own. It's not an agency. The body is not aware, just as an artificial intelligent program is not aware. At least I cannot imagine any time that science could ever develop an actually aware program. I cannot imagine that. Maybe, who knows?
Who knows, yeah. Who knows exactly. Oh, that was very beautiful description of what happened when, instead of thinking, there is a looking, which is crucial at my opinion, what we are trying to point, to do, to guide in liberation unleashed. Could you elaborate on this? Because, you know, when self hears this, it just can't imagine what it is to be without the self first.
You mean to look?
Yeah.
Well,
because,
yes.
Because self hears, and on one hand that there's nothing that the self can do. And here comes like a little bit of confusion, probably, for most selves who are watching all kind of stuff. You see, like, there's no you can't do anything.
Yeah. I find this a bit, I even could say, dangerous to say that, because in the ultimate sense, yes, there is no person, there is no doer doing an inquiry. But if I'm believing that I'm a personal self, if this belief is active and alive, then it very feels like, it feels very real for me that I am doing the inquiry. So this is what I'm saying to my clients who are hanging up on this idea, because yes, it is very common. I say to them, as long as it feels that I am doing it, then I have to do it. And as the result of doing the inquiry, the outcome is to discover that there is no one doing it, and yet it happens.
Yeah, exactly. It happens on its own.
Happens on its own. So that's the outcome of the inquiry. But if I just adopt this as an idea because I've heard it from someone, I watched something on YouTube, I heard a teacher saying that there is no one there, there is nothing to do. So I just sit back and I do nothing. I don't do inquiry, I don't investigate. Well, then nothing will change. The idea or the belief of the separate self stays intact. So as long as it feels, I have to do it. Or I often say, in any given moment when it feels, because even after the self is seen through, it doesn't mean that the feeling or the sense of a doer is permanently gone. No, it will come back. It's a flip-flopping period, and I have to look again. Any given moment when it feels like that there is an I here doing, thinking, deciding, being afraid, whatever, then it needs to be looked at. Or not necessary, but then one cannot expect suffering to stop.
Yeah, this is very common also. That was my next, or one of the next questions that are coming here while listening to you, about expectations. Many people are like driven by this attempt to stop suffering, which is, of course, human conditioning. It's not something like, it's not bad. But does suffering stop? What happens to suffering? Let's say mental suffering.
Well, at the beginning, I think there is just a very, very few lucky whom suffering completely stops right in the beginning. I think for the majority of people, suffering still goes on and off, or maybe there is a honeymoon period at the beginning, but then it comes back, and often with a vengeance. Because suffering is not just simply about believing that there is an I. It is a conditioned, habitual thinking, feeling, and behaving pattern. And any given moment when a thought is supported with an unpleasant feeling, then that unpleasant feeling gives the impression that those thoughts are actually a person.
Yeah.
I am the one feeling this terrible fear or anxiety or anger or anything. It is happening to me. In those moments when these patterns are triggered, then the feeling of being a separate entity locked inside the body comes back. And what is being triggered? It's all sorts of emotional traumas or unresolved, any kind of unresolved emotional issues that we all have. We don't have to have any serious trauma, but of course, for so many people there are. But even if someone has a relatively good childhood, we still have emotional baggage, unresolved things, which are repeatedly coming up, being projected outside to other people, to the world, and playing itself out. And in those moments, the self, the I, feels very, very real. So for that, one thing is to, if one can, to do the inquiry in those moments. Maybe they can't because it is so strong. Then do the inquiry after when it is calmed down a little bit. But also I found Byron Katie's work extremely helpful. Actually, I used to be a psychologist, so I did quite a lot of therapy. But how I see it right now is that the Byron Katie's work it is doing what therapy is supposed to do.
Yeah.
It is, I find it just amazing because it targets those beliefs, which is the foundation of the separate self, on which foundation we can identify as a person. So if any of those beliefs are looked at, investigated, and seen to be not true, then a small piece of that foundation is just chipped off. It's gone forever. And the more we investigate these frequently repeating, recycled thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, then more and more parts will be chipped off. And at some point, there will be hardly anything left to stand on and claim that this is me. Or to identify with. And everybody has their own favorite top 10 beliefs about themselves or their life. So we don't have to do every single tiny thing, just the major ones. And then the smaller ones, those easily can be seen through.
Yeah, true. Yeah, sometimes belief are just seeing what they were when they fall apart. You don't know that you believe in something before. Yeah, it's nice.
And you asked about the expectations. So yes, this is one of the major expectations, that suddenly, if it's seen that there is no real entity inside the body, then well, all my problems will be gone. And it is logical. It is logical to believe that. So I understand. It's the I who suffers. So if the I is seen through, then suffering must be gone. But unfortunately, this is not the case. Actually, there are two main other expectations that I commonly encounter with. One of them is those who meditate a lot or know, in Buddhist terms, they do all kind of meditations, going to all sorts of jhanas, all kind of special states. And those states can be quite blissful. And mistaking or believing that those blissful states are the proofs that the self is seen through. Or in other words, if the self is seen through, then there will be this continuous blissful state, which our certain teachers are talking about, or maybe I might even myself experienced it in meditation. So that so no unpleasant emotion will ever occur, and it will be just continuous bliss, or at least a continuous peace.
Yeah.
And those are just peak experiences. A peak experience is not the simple fact. It is ordinary to see that there is no person here. It does not prevent the seeing of it does not prevent the possibility of any kind of emotion to arise. It's not linked to a certain state. Of course, the more we inquire, more and more peaceful, more and more peace will be the default state. And the positive emotions will be predominant. But that is just a byproduct of not believing those stressful, contracted thoughts, which assumes that there is an entity here who can be hurt, who can be harmed. And the other common expectation is around oneness. I'm not sure if you encounter with this.
Yeah, a lot. The flow, oneness, the flow of life, oneness, yeah, wholeness.
Yes. And
ocean.
So when the idea of oneness is heard from the point of view of a personal selfhood, so with that mindset, we try to imagine that, of course, I'm this body. I'm localized here. Where the skin ends, that's where I am. So if I could experience oneness, it could mean something like I feel to be one with the tree, or feel to be one with you. And of course, you are that body. So these two bodies somehow merge. Something like that.
And everything
so
becomes
everyone,
one.
Everyone becomes one, but even the seekers don't really formulate for themselves what they actually mean by oneness, but they fantasize about something along these lines. So oneness means that somehow this body will merge with the surroundings. And this is just not the case. So I usually, I have to confront clients that, what do you exactly mean by that? Do you really expect that this, how would this body eat if it would be on a physical level? So the perception, because that would be a perceptual change in the visual field, maybe on an emotional level, okay. But then vision does not become a homogeneous blob of colors and shapes. So oneness is not that.
Yeah.
Oneness has nothing to do with the objectivity of the physical world, with objects. It's not about objects. The body is an object of perception. So this body and that body, or a chair or a tree, will always be seen as something different from each other. And then they ask, then what is oneness? So that's the hard part to explain, because for the mind, for the point of view of the framework of a separate entity, it is really hard to understand, because in language, very hard to describe something non-dual with the dualistic language. And even if it can be described, it's even harder to understand from that framework. But how I try to explain, if I need to, is that it is the discovery that the subject is one with everything else. So it's the body is an object. The tree is an object. On the level of objects, of physical objects, there will always be a seeming separation. So it's not on this level. Something is aware or knows what is going on, and that is not an object. That is a subject, which is by definition not an object. So it cannot be another object which is separate from other object. So it's not on the level of objects, but rather that whichever is knowing this current experience, whatever it is, that is not separate or other than the current happening, than the current experience. So non-separation is between the idea of a subject and an object. But it's not among objects.
Yeah.
It's not, but it is, I know my explanation is not the best.
Quite impossible. No, it's perfect. It's quite impossible to explain this, although there are attempts also here too. But I have noticed something like, usually when it is seen, there is no one directing anything. And this type of questions like oneness, or I don't see oneness, does this mean that there is a self here? They just collapse. There are no questions like this. Maybe, I don't know.
But even the word that I don't see, for me, that implies that I don't see with my eyes. It is not something see with the eyes. So it's not that the visual sight somehow changes. Yes, seeing that there is no personal self is a shift in perception, but not in a way, not in the five sensory way, not a shift in how we see with the eyes or hear with the ears. And of course, even these statements are not true, because not the eyes see, but just let's just accept that.
Yeah, some other expectation came like that there will be many changes into this character, into the character, or into the behaving of character with others, relationships, whatever. And it can be quite shocking when there is nothing will change with the character. I remember that you wrote me something like, but the character stays almost intact. And I was like,
At least,
yeah.
Yes, at least at the beginning, of course, with time and with extra inquiry. So this is very important. Quite many people stop. So they see that there is no personal entity, okay, and then they stop, as if the work was done. It's not done. It's not done. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems that it's constantly unfolding. The moment you say, oh yeah, this is seen, or whatever, something is being seen, let's say some belief fall apart, and in the next moment there is something else which is unfolding by itself again. It's like constantly moving. I don't know.
Yeah, and and yes, there is a change to the character. At least I can say that to this character that I call myself I here, this character, this persona is changing. But a change is usually seen retrospect, especially when I encounter with someone or something from the past.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised, I used to relate to this differently. Or what a difference is between how my old friend sees the world and I see something has changed. Because this change in the personhood has become the new normal.
Yeah.
So we don't really even notice, because it's not a quick change, or at least not for most people.
Yeah, but when changes will be happening, no one knows. And that's like, again, expectations are, it's good to meet those expectations, because no one knows how will be with you. Even you don't know anything, how things will unfold. Nice.
And the other thing, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
This is the other compulsion of the self. I need to know, I need to control, I have to know what is going to happen. I have to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
But do I? And it's not a problem to prepare. It becomes problematic only if it causes suffering.
Mm-hmm. How many people have you been guiding in LU? Do you remember, or do you? I know that you are not counting, but
Oh my God. I don't know, but
and in your website, I'm going to share your website in the description as well.
I mean the face-to-face or in the liberation.
Yeah, both, let's say.
Yeah, so I don't count the numbers. I think in total around 300 people I had conversation with, maybe more, I don't know. Quite a lot. Some people stay and they do a really nice investigation, but quite many drop out.
Maybe half of them.
Quite early.
At my view, maybe half of them or more. And face-to-face on your website?
Oh, I don't count that either, but quite a lot. Even face-to-face, there are some people who find this so helpful that they want to come back even after they've seen through the self. They want to deepen, there are other beliefs to investigate, or they want to work on some specific emotional thing or a specific theme, pattern that comes up. So there are some people that I have a quite long time being with them. And some people I have just 1 or 2 sessions. It's really different.
Yeah.
And not everyone finds this helpful, and not everyone is actually looking for this. They might think that this is what they are looking for, but not really, or at least not now. And that's okay. Maybe later, or maybe never. That's even okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Some, when they realize that, oh, I actually need to do the work. I actually need to inquire. This is another expectation of some people, that as if this were transmittable. And there are some teachers who says that. And maybe, I don't know, but I never ever been able to do that.
Yeah.
So it is not enough, I think, to just simply talk to someone, to have a conversation, to just gather more information about this. I have to personally do the work. You see, I don't like talking these non-duality terms. Oh, there is no one here, so blah, blah, blah. If it feels like that I'm doing it, then I have to do it. With guiding, I use a very different language, because for guiding, I find it quite important to have a very precise wording, because that can help the client to target their eye, so to speak, where to look precisely.
It helped a lot here.
Yeah. So so I try to really consciously formulate my comments, especially my questions, with guiding. But otherwise, even in a face-to-face conversation, if it's not directly a guided question, why not simply speak in everyday language? The word I is not a demon.
Yeah.
You can freely use it.
Yeah. I remember something like you told me when clients start to excuse that he's using or she's using a lot of I. So
yes.
yeah.
I just recently had someone, I just wrote this a message along these lines just a few days ago to someone. Exactly, that it is also quite a common that people get a really good understanding, or they might even have glimpses. They might actually had a few moments of seeing it, but then they are back still believing. The concept is still holding onto.
Yeah.
And then they start using, putting quotation marks around the word I and me and my. And there's no point. There is no point. I'm just fooling myself if I'm doing that.
Mm.
In the past, when I communicated with clients in written format, most of the time I used quotation just to show them that this is not something real. But nowadays I'm noticing that I'm abandoning the quotations. I hardly ever use them because I'm trying to show them that this is not the matter of using quotation marks or not. This does not make it unreal in my experience.
Yeah.
And of course, there are people, quite so many, who have a really good intellectual understanding of it. And they are hoping if they could have a conversation with a guide, then they might get the last piece of missing information, which will do it for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you say it, but in my experience, it's often those people, the more intellectual information or knowledge someone has about this topic, it's often the hardest for them to actually look, because they are just in the intellectual realm, analyzing, speculating, figuring it out, and also seeking. The seeking is contained in those ideas. I know exactly what I'm looking for. These are the signs, whether I'm seeing it or not.
Mm.
And then I might miss the whole point.
Yeah. Intellect is amazing too, but it's completely useless in this inquiry, in this type of, I don't know, inquiry. Or I don't see you in, I don't hear you, sorry. I can't hear you. We are back.
Yeah, so I have a blog that I nowadays hardly write anything on it, but recently I've used it to write some generalized comments for clients with the repeated patterns. And there's one of them who are really intellectual, and why it is so important to look at your own experience and not what you think about it, not what you conceptualize. Of course, that post is just a story, but somehow it feels like I have to cut through that intellectual stuff to the client as if they need a proof that it's not attained by thinking.
Yeah.
And of course, I cannot prove anything for them. They have to be able to let go of that precious intellect, which is very useful. There's nothing wrong with it, but not for the inquiry. For the inquiry, it is useless, just as you said.
Yeah. And can you say the main difference between looking and thinking according your experience? And
well, we guys share very similar ideas. So let's say I want to know what the weather is like. What options do I have? The intellectual one is a second-hand information. So if I want to know the weather, I might sit in the room and I do a Google search to see what's the weather in my location, or I called my mother, ask her.
That was nice.
Or something like that. So this is a second-hand information. The intellectual is always just something I could believe. So if I call you, please tell me what the weather is, I can only ever believe you. I cannot be 100% sure because this is not my first-hand experience.
Yeah.
Looking is for me to go into the window or to the front door and actually look and see whether it's raining or it is a sunny day. So I need to have a first-hand experience, not just something as a thought. Because if you tell me that it is sunny, well, that's a concept, that's a thought idea that you are sharing with me, and I just believe it or not. That's all.
Yeah.
But looking is a first-hand experience. And also, I would also comment some very important aspect of looking, because this is also quite common among my clients, that often people perceive looking as if it were something passive.
Yeah.
So they got a question, which is a pointer for them to look. For example, where is the eye? And then they ask the question, which is a thought. So we start with the intellect, which is a thought. Where is the eye? And then just wait. And they are waiting for an answer to arrive. And that answer, if it arrives, then it's most of the time a thought. A thought claims, I don't know, or it is in my chest, or there is no eye.
It should be somewhere. It should be somewhere, because I feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be somewhere here. So if the answer, so there is a question asked in the form of a thought, there's a waiting, a passive state, and an answer arrives in the form of a thought, well, just my habitual thinking pattern went on and my usual beliefs showed up in that thought, as that thought. So that is not looking. Looking happens between the two. So I ask the intellectual question of thought, where is the I? And then it's not a passive waiting. It's an active search. So if looking is searching, as I'm literally searching for it. It must be here. If it is real, if it is, then it must be present right now. So I have to find it. So I'm searching for it. Where do I search? Usually inside the body, or in thoughts, mental images. Where else could be? So I'm actively searching. And in those moments of searching, the insight comes wordlessly. There's a moment of seeing when there is a gap between two thoughts. And of course, when there was the seeing, searching, it's not here, nowhere. And that nowhere is already an intellectual thought, but that nowhere is the result of the non-verbal recognition, of experiential recognition that it's not nowhere, that it's nowhere. Yeah. So this is another stumbling block for some when I tell them that it's not a thought-based. The looking and the seeing part is not a thought-based, but they say, but I have to use thoughts to describe. Of course, that's not a problem. So the question is thought-based, looking, seeing is wordless, thoughtless, outside of the intellect, and then thoughts verbalize it, formulate an answer. And that's all right, there's nothing that's needed, otherwise how would we communicate? That's okay. But looking happens in the gap between two thoughts, looking and the seeing.
And checking again, that was also very helpful here. So constantly, not just look once. Oh yeah, there is no self here, and that's it. Okay, that's all. Bye.
Yes.
I see no self. I see no self, and shit still happens. There was something in over the internet, and I laughed a lot.
Yes, this is another thing that, let's say, I looked and I had a glimpse, a true, real, actual glimpse that there's nothing there. But in the next moment, it starts up again. And if I don't look again and again and again, then I just will rely on a memory of that previous looking. I conceptualize it. It becomes an intellectual knowledge for me. It's not my experience right now.
I remember something from the past.
Yes, I remember something. So that's already a gathered, it's already secondhand, so to speak, because right now it's not directly accessible for me. It's just a thought presents something I remember. That's not actual. Anytime so if someone really saw through the self, then anytime when they look, they reliably can see it again and again without fail. It does not mean that it's continuously seen, at least not at the beginning. That's another expectation, that once it's seen, never again I will miss it. And yes, there's a saying that once it's seen, it cannot be unseen. Yes.
Both are true.
Those are true, but it means that anytime when I will, and I put into quotation marks, when I want to, when I look, I will see it. Always, it never fails. For me, that's me. That is what means that it cannot be unseen. It never ever fails. And of course, with time, these time lapses, when it is seen, it gets longer and longer, and when it's not seen, it gets shorter and shorter. But it requires repeated. This is a habit. Even falling into the trap, so to speak, or believing it again is just an automatic habit. That's the default state that we are operating from.
Yeah. And in the beginning, so-called beginning, like you mentioned, here was like looking was implied more effort. I don't know how to say, but it looks harder, or the habitual thinking feels so familiar and so precious, like, oh, dear thoughts, my dear sweet thoughts. It's so pleasant to dwell in thoughts, but it is only in the beginning. I just can't think what was it like to be immersed in the thoughts constantly. It's just exhausting. Now feels exhausting, but it was like very normal.
Yeah. So just because there is a seeming appearance of a self or a sense of self, which is usually a feeling or a sensation mistaken to be an entity, well, then what? There is a sensation. If it feels like to be an I, then I have to look. If it's seen that this is just a habitual, familiar sensation, which is usually a contraction, then it's not a problem. Let's call it on its own name. A sensation is a sensation. It's not an I. It's not a sense of me.
Yeah. A thought comes and claims like this is the sense of me.
Well, if that comes, then I need to look. And probably the reason it feels like that it is a sense of me, because there is some emotional charge present, and that gives a reality effect to it, as if it were an actual entity. So around those areas, around those emotional things, whatever has been triggered, that's need to be looked at. Because it's not, it will come again and again. It has happened 10,000 times in my life. It will come again. Just pure habit.
Yeah.
And the emotional charge makes it feel personal.
Yeah, and real.
And I think the beauty comes, a real beauty, or the first real feeling of freedom, when a contracted sensation can be there and not being mistaken to be a person, to be the I. And it still comes at the beginning with certain, but it can be there because it is not a me anymore.
Yeah, it's not mistaken to be something.
Yeah, so the resistance or the pushing against that contraction gradually lessens and lessens and lessens. And the less resistance to it is there to it, the weaker it becomes, and gradually it just falls away. At some point, it won't come again.
So nice to talk to you. Really. Video is different than writing. We've chat before, but it was writing format.
Yeah, it is.
How to end? Would you like to say something? Maybe we should make another one. There are so many questions that are popping now, but we are almost an hour. We cover an hour.
Ah, yeah. Yes, we can have another one.
I would love to. I would love to. So I'm going to put the description in the description, your blog and your website. Well, oh, they are. Yeah, your blog was fading.
Wailing.
Yes.
Fading, wailing. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful things that are there. I will put both of them.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something in the end? In the end. It sounds very like official, but yeah, if you just want to.
Suddenly, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Forget it. Forget it.
You know, this is a topic that I can speak a lot about, but without a prompting question, it is so hard. Say something about it. Well,
yeah,
I have nothing to say. If there is a question, then it will trigger more and more thoughts. So then it becomes easy to talk about it.
Oh, we can.
But when someone just confronts me, say something, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
So here comes to like invite you, if you want to. We can make a live chat with the questions and answers.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. I found it also like very exciting to receive questions live in a way, or comments or whatever. And there is this, you don't know what the answer will be, but it comes out of nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly how thoughts are coming out of nothing.
Well, it's just there. That's such a good inquiry question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah.
How that thought pop up here right now. Okay. Well, I guess we are going to see each other very soon again. I'm going to stop it now. Thank you for your time, Vivien. Really, really appreciate it.